She called me sister, but sold me to cover her debts. They said blood was thicker than water, but my sister proved that debt was thicker than blood when she sold me like I was nothing, and smiled while doing it. I grew up believing I had a sister who would die for me. Her name was Ivy. 4 years older, louder, bolder. The kind of girl who laughed at consequences and wore her rebellion like armor. But to me she was safety wrapped in sarcasm. She would fight anyone who looked at me wrong, steal snacks from gas stations just to make me smile, and hug me so tightly I thought no fear could ever slip through. When our parents died in that car crash, everything shattered. I was 12. Ivy was 16. And in one night we went from daughters to orphans. No one in the family wanted us. We were shuffled like a burden no one wanted to carry until our aunt finally agreed, reluctantly, to take us in. She didn't want children. She wanted cheap labor. We slept in a storage room that smelled like bleach and damp wood. Dinner was whatever she didn't finish. Breakfast was air. Ivy made sure I never went to bed hungry. If there was only one piece of bread, she gave it to me. If our aunt screamed at me, Ivy would take the blame. "I'll always protect you," she whispered one night, pressing her forehead to mine as I cried in the dark. I believed her. I didn't just believe her, I worshipped her. She was all I had. But somewhere along the line Ivy began to change. It started slow. Little secret here. A missing item there. By the time she turned 20, it wasn't Ivy who walked through our front door anymore. It was a stranger wearing her face. She started dressing in tight skirts and heels she could barely walk in. She'd vanish for days, then show up reeking of smoke, perfume, and bad choices. She told me she was working nights at a club. That she was earning real money doing things I wouldn't understand. But I saw the emptiness behind her smile. I saw the way her hands trembled when she counted cash. And I saw the fear in her eyes when her phone buzzed late at night. "Don't worry about me," she'd say, brushing my hair behind my ear like she used to when I was small. "Just focus on school, okay? You're the smart one. You're my ticket out of this life." I wanted to believe her. But her warmth was fading. Her voice, once strong and defiant, had started to crack at the edges. Then came the night that confirmed my worst fears. It was nearly 3 a.m. when the door creaked open. I sat up instantly. Something in me always knew when Ivy was in danger. She stumbled inside, barefoot, her face pale and her eyes wide like she'd seen death. Her dress was torn at the shoulder. She tried to smile, but it broke halfway across her face. "Hey little sis," she mumbled. I rushed to her, helped her sit on the edge of the mattress. "Ivy, what happened?" She shook her head. "Just fell, that's all. You know me, always clumsy." But as I helped her undress, I saw the bruises. Deep purple blooms running up her arms. A red mark across her collarbone. Scratches on her thighs. My stomach twisted. "You didn't fall," I whispered. She looked away. Silence, the kind of silence that screams. I wanted to push her, to make her tell me everything, but I could see her walls were already crumbling. She looked like a girl drowning in a storm she had no strength left to fight. So I did the only thing I could. I held her. I held my sister like I used to when we were little, when she cried after nightmares and whispered promises into the night. But I didn't know that this time I was the one in the nightmare. And Ivy, the sister I would have died for, was already planning to sell me to save herself. That broke something in me. Not like a window shattering. No, it was quieter than that. More cruel. Like a thread snapping deep inside, a part of me unraveling silently in the dark. The girl Ivy raised, the one who believed in promises, in loyalty, in sisterhood, she died that night quietly without a scream. In her place rose someone colder. Someone who would survive. I stopped crying. Stopped begging. Stopped resisting. Instead I started watching. Listening. Pretending. I became exactly what they wanted me to be. Obedient. Soft-spoken. Controlled. I cooked better. I served food before they asked. I made my fear look like gratitude. I smiled not because I felt safe but because I knew it disarmed them. And it worked. Marco's guards, arrogant, lazy men who never imagined someone like me had anything left inside. They began to let their guard down. They laughed in front of me. Let their weapons lean against tables. Left doors half closed. They started treating me like furniture. Something to step over, not something to watch. What they didn't know was that I remembered everything. Every routine. Every shift change. Every door creak. Every broken camera. I waited. For weeks. For one sliver of an opening. And then came. Marco was drunk. Really drunk. His breath was thick with rum and his eyes barely focused as he stumbled down the hallway. He left his office door wide open. My heart slammed so hard in my chest I was sure someone would hear it. But I moved, silent, quick, purposeful. I stepped inside his office like I had no right to exist. Like any sound could end me. His phone was on the desk, screen lit. Unlocked. It was now or never. I snatched it and typed with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking. The helpline code. I remembered it from the back of a tattered fashion magazine one of the girlfriends had left in the bathroom. Safe 27. Send location. I hit send. A message popped up. Location received. Help is on the way. Stay alive. I dropped the phone, closed the door, and walked back to my corner like nothing happened. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Every knock at the door made my heart jolt. Every time Marco looked at me I thought he knew. Every second I expected a bullet to the head. But I waited. And prayed. Then it happened. It was just past midnight. I was scrubbing the floors when I heard it, the sound of tires screeching outside. Then shouting. Then gunshots. Chaos erupted like a storm tearing through the walls. One of the guards ran past me, only to be slammed to the floor by a black-clad figure. Another tried to shoot, but a flashbang exploded near the window, blinding everyone in the room. I curled against the wall, hands over my ears, waiting for death. Then I felt a hand, firm, warm, grab my wrist. A woman in body armor knelt down. Her voice cut through the madness. You're safe now. We've got you. I didn't believe her, not at first. I didn't even know what safety felt like anymore. But I nodded. Let them pull me out. Marco was dragged out kicking and cursing, blood on his shirt and fear in his eyes. His empire, gone. His arrogance shattered. I was taken to a shelter that night. The nurse said I was dehydrated, underweight, bruised, but I was alive. Alive. But Ivy? Ivy was nowhere. No one found her. No records. No arrest. No apology. She had vanished like smoke. Vanished like someone who knew exactly when to run, and how to hide. And so, I said nothing. Not to the police. Not to the therapists. Not to the girls in the shelter who told their stories around tear-stained tables. I rebuilt myself in silence. Changed my name. Learned to speak again, slowly, carefully. I started volunteering at a crisis center. Counseling other survivors. People told me I was strong. Brave. But they didn't know. They didn't know I went home every night and opened a folder on my laptop labeled, Ivy. Screenshots. Clues. Search threads. Faces I thought might be hers. Every lead followed. Every trace. Hunted. Because I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. I wanted her to look at me, really look and see the girl she left behind. Standing in front of her, not broken, but burning. Then one night, just as I was about to give up the search, a message slid into my inbox. No subject. No sender I recognized. Just 10 words. I know what she did to you. She's in Prague now. Working under the name Lena Hart. My heart slammed so hard against my ribs I could barely breathe. I stared at the screen for a full minute, frozen. My tea had gone cold in my hands. The walls around me seemed to close in, not from fear but from the flood of adrenaline that came with knowing. She was real. She hadn't vanished. She was out there, breathing, laughing, living, while I had spent years stitching my soul back together with shaky hands. I booked a flight that night. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't sleep. Just stared at her name, Lena Hart, over and over like it was a curse I could finally break. I arrived in Prague on a cold, gray morning. The city felt like a painting, beautiful, layered, hiding things in the shadows. I spent 3 days moving through the underground scene, following whispers, cash-bribing bartenders, and watching for familiar eyes in unfamiliar crowds. And then, on the 4th day I saw her. I was standing across the street from a glass-windowed cafe tucked between 2 art galleries. The kind of place that sold expensive coffee in silence. There she was, Ivy, laughing with a man in a navy blazer, tossing her head back, lips painted red. She wore a silk champagne-colored dress, her hair pinned up, diamonds on her wrist. And not a single ounce of guilt on her face. Felt happy, untouched. Like she had never sold her sister for a debt. My hands were shaking as I crossed the street. But my face. My face was still. Dead calm. When I stepped through the cafe door, she didn't see me at first. But when I walked up to her table, everything about her stilled. Her smile dropped like shattered glass. Her fingers tightened around her wine glass. And her voice, when it finally came out, was hollow. "You're not supposed to be here." I leaned in, eyes locked on hers. And I smiled. "Neither are you." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She looked at the man next to her, confused, alert, then back at me. She tried to reach for her purse. But it was too late. I had already sent the tip to Interpol the night before. The cafe, the name, the new passport ID she was using, everything. The moment she stood to leave, 3 plainclothes officers blocked the exit. "Ivy Rivers, also known as Lena Hart, you're under arrest for crimes including human trafficking, identity fraud, and international money laundering." The cafe fell silent. Chairs scraped back. Someone gasped. And Ivy, my sister, started screaming. "Wait. No, she's lying. I didn't do anything." She thrashed, heels slipping on the marble floor, eyes wild as they cuffed her hands. Then she saw me again. Locked eyes with me, desperation flickering beneath her rage. "I did everything for you," she shouted, voice breaking. "You don't understand, I did it for us." I stepped forward, closer, calm as ice. And in the quietest voice I'd ever spoken with, I whispered, "No, you did everything for yourself. And sold your soul right along with your sister." They dragged her out, screaming my name, crying, begging, swearing I'd regret it. But I stood there, motionless. Not because I hated her, but because I no longer belonged to the girl who once needed her. After Ivy was taken away, I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I didn't feel victorious or free. I just sat still, like everything inside me had gone silent. You'd think getting justice would bring some kind of relief, some breath of fresh air after years of suffocating in secrets. But instead I felt hollow. He was my last blood tie. The only thread that connected me to the girl I used to be. And now even that was gone. I returned home to an empty apartment. Sat on the floor for hours. Didn't eat, didn't sleep. Just stared at the wall, waiting for something, anything, to rise inside me. But there was nothing. People said I should be proud. They called me brave, a survivor, a voice for the voiceless. But what they didn't see was the way I flinched at the sound of my own name. The way I'd catch my reflection in a mirror and feel like I was looking at a stranger made of cracked glass. Held together, but unable to reflect anything whole. Day after day I wore my mask. Volunteered at the shelter. Smiled when people said, "You're so strong." And then sat in the bathroom stall after everyone left, pressing my fist to my mouth so I wouldn't scream. Then one night, after a long, heavy shift at the shelter, I stayed behind to clean. The lights were dim. The silence felt thicker than usual. Rosa, one of the senior counselors, walked in and sat beside me. She'd always been there in the background. Warm but distant. The kind of woman who looked like she carried stories she never told. She didn't say hello. Didn't ask what was wrong. He just said, "I know what silence sounds like, when it comes from a place of deep hurt. I used to carry the same kind." I didn't respond. Didn't even look at her. But then she spoke again, softer this time. "My daughter disappeared when she was 15. I searched every alley, every street, every hospital, morgue in 3 countries. I never found her. Eventually people told me to stop, told me to let go." She took a long breath. "But how do you let go of someone who still has your heart?" The words hit me like a blow I didn't expect. My lips parted but no sound came out. Because finally, someone understood that pain doesn't end with justice. It lingers, it mutates. It lives inside the silence. Rosa looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw her eyes were wet but steady. "Helping girls like you," she said, "is how I learned to breathe again." And that was it. That was all it took. All the walls I'd spent years building. They crumbled. Not with a scream. Not with rage. But with a sob. A single, broken, breathless sob that escaped before I could stop it. Rosa didn't ask me to explain. She didn't press. She just reached out, slow and gentle, and pulled me into her arms. And for the first time in years, I let myself be held. I let myself fall apart in someone's embrace without shame, without fear, without pretending I was okay. And in that quiet moment, wrapped in the arms of a stranger who had lost everything, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to believe in a long time. I wasn't alone anymore. Over the weeks, Rosa became more than a counselor. She became a rhythm I didn't know I needed. It started with gentle invitations. Nothing pushy, nothing heavy. Just, come by for dinner if you're not too tired. Or, I made soup and I accidentally cooked for 10. So I came. The first time I barely touched the food. The second time I finished the bowl. By the third I was asking for the recipe. Her home was small, warm, and filled with ghosts that didn't try to scare you. Old salsa music played softly from a scratched radio. And the scent of cilantro and garlic always seemed to drift from the kitchen. She said quiet prayers before meals. Not the kind that guilt you, but the kind that asked for peace. As if she was praying for more than just herself. One night after dinner I curled up on her couch while she folded laundry. I must have dozed off mid-conversation. When I woke up it was past midnight. The apartment was dark and quiet. But over me was a soft blanket I hadn't brought. And on the coffee table, a handwritten note in Rosa's looping cursive. You don't have to be alone just because you were left alone. Mi casa es tu casa. My home is your home. I stared at the words until my eyes burned. No one had ever said that to me. No one had offered me a home without wanting something in return. And it became true. I moved in a month later. Not in a rush, not like fleeing, but like planting roots for the first time in years. I unpacked my suitcase slowly. But more than that, I unpacked the things I didn't know how to carry anymore. My fears, my nightmares, my trust. Rosa never asked questions. She never demanded healing. She just made room for it. Every night there was a plate for me at the table, even on the nights I couldn't sit down. She never made me feel guilty for my silence. She just kept showing up, until I did too. Then came Sam. Her godson. The first time I saw him he was fixing a wobbly chair in the hallway. A small toolkit in his lap and a pencil tucked behind his ear. He looked up and gave me a soft smile, the kind that didn't ask anything from you. We barely spoke for weeks. Just nodded when we passed each other. Sometimes a quiet, hey. Sometimes just eye contact and a breath. But there was something about him. Something calming. He didn't hover. He didn't try to pull me open. He just made space like Rosa. He seemed to know exactly when I needed silence. And when I needed someone nearby without saying a word. One rainy afternoon I came home soaked and exhausted. Rosa was out. Sam was in the living room surrounded by old, disassembled pocket watches. He looked up then reached for a small box. I thought you might like this, he said. I opened it slowly. Inside were a handful of tiny, gleaming watches, each one carefully repaired, ticking softly. They were all broken when I found them, he said almost shyly. Thought maybe, you'd like to see that broken things can still keep time. I didn't say anything. Didn't trust my voice not to crack. So I just sat down beside him. And smiled. And in that moment, surrounded by soft ticking and quiet kindness, I realized something. I didn't need to chase family anymore. I was already being chosen. Not for what I could give. Not for what I survived. But simply for being here. And for the first time, the silence inside me didn't feel empty. It felt safe. Time passed, not in big dramatic leaps, but in slow, quiet moments that stitched my soul back together one fragile thread at a time. Healing didn't come like sunlight breaking through the clouds. It came in waves. Unpredictable. Unforgiving. Some days I laughed at things I didn't think I'd ever find funny again. Other days I woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing from dreams I couldn't explain. Dreams where I was back in that room. Where Ivy smiled while I screamed. But Rosa, she was always there. Constant. If I screamed at 2 a.m. she didn't ask questions. She just sat on the edge of my bed and whispered, "Breathe with me." Her presence didn't erase the pain, but it reminded me that I wasn't fighting alone. Sam never tried to fix me. He simply waited. If I came home silent, he brewed tea and left it at my door. If I cried, he didn't ask why. He just sat near me, quiet, steady, unshaken. Like a lighthouse that knew the storm would pass eventually. And in that silence, I began to feel safe. Really safe. Safe enough to stop watching my back. Safe enough to stop bracing for betrayal. Then one evening, the sky glowing orange outside the kitchen window. Rosa called me into the living room. She was holding a small velvet box in her weathered hands. "I want you to have something," she said, her voice trembling just slightly. She opened the box and revealed a delicate gold necklace with a heart-shaped locket. It looked old, well-worn, and full of memory. "This was my daughter's," she said softly. "She wore it every day, until the day she didn't come home." My breath caught. My hands stayed still at my sides. "Rosa," I whispered, I can't. I'm not. My daughter." Her eyes met mine. "I'm not your daughter." My voice cracked as I said it. Because a part of me wanted to be. But another part, the broken part, still didn't feel worthy. Rosa didn't flinch. Didn't argue. She stepped closer, took my face gently in her hands and said, "You don't have to be born for me to belong to me. Love is louder than blood. And you, mi cielo, are the answer to a prayer I didn't know I was still whispering." I broke. Collapsed into her arms, sobbing. Not because I was weak, but because someone had finally looked at the most shattered parts of me and still said, "Stay. Be mine." Years passed, love grew, and so did I. Rosa taught me how to cook with feeling instead of fear. Sam taught me how to laugh with my eyes again. And I learned how to be still. To be loved without needing to earn it. Takes everything eventually. The day Rosa got sick, she smiled through the pain. Said she'd lived enough lifetimes through the girls she helped. Said she was at peace. But I wasn't. Not even close. The night she slipped away, the hospital was quiet. Too quiet. Machines beeped softly. The smell of antiseptic lingered in the air. I sat beside her, holding her hand, my head resting on the edge of her bed. She turned to me, her voice barely above a breath. "My daughter came home after all," she whispered and smiled. Then she was gone. Just like that. Like a candle burning quietly until there was no flame left. I didn't scream. Didn't collapse. I just held her hand even after it turned cold. Because letting go felt like losing her all over again. But I knew deep down. She never really left. I buried Rosa on a rainy morning. The sky wept gently as if it knew the world was losing someone irreplaceable. Her casket was simple, just like she would have wanted. No grand speeches. No embellished lies. Just truth. Just love. Just the people whose lives she saved with her quiet, unwavering strength. I had chosen the spot myself. Right next to an empty grave, the headstone faded by time and storms. It bore the name of the daughter Rosa never stopped mourning. Sophia Hart. 1999? There was no end date. No closure. Just a question that haunted the earth beneath it. I had the stone cleaned, polished, and then carved a second name beneath it. Not as a replacement, but as a continuation. A second daughter. Found not by birth, but through fire. Through pain. Through healing. As I stood between the two names, a strange peace washed over me. The kind of peace that hurts a little because it's real. Because it costs something. I laid a single white lily between the graves and whispered, "You didn't lose your daughter, Rosa. You just didn't know where to find her yet." Sam was the one who held me through the grief. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet, consistent love. He never tried to fill the silence. Just made it bearable. One night, as we sat on the porch beneath a purple dusk sky, he reached for my hand and said softly, "I think I fell in love the first time you smiled at one of my broken clocks. It was the way you looked at something shattered. And didn't flinch." I didn't answer right away. I just leaned my head on his shoulder. Because that's what love had become. Not promises whispered in the dark. But presence, patience, peace. We married in Rosa's garden, beneath the orange tree she used to talk to like an old friend. I wore a locket, hers, with a photo of Sophia on one side, and an empty frame on the other, waiting for the daughter I might one day find. The one I would save the way Rosa saved me. Now I run the shelter Rosa built with her own hands. It's filled with second chances, and quiet victories that no one writes headlines about. I know the look in a scared girl's eyes when she walks in, trying not to fall apart. I know the silence that screams louder than words. Because I was her once. And when they come in, trembling, exhausted, unsure if they deserve kindness, I sit beside them. No clipboard. No questions. Just truth. And I say the words Rosa once whispered to me. Words that stitch me back together. You don't have to stay broken. You don't have to be alone. Family isn't just who shares your blood. Sometimes it's the ones who choose to stay. When everyone else leaves. And for a moment, even just a moment, I see their shoulders drop. Their breath steady. Their eyes soften. And I know Rosa didn't just save my life. She gave me a purpose, a name, a home. And through me, she never truly left. So to anyone listening right now, maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe someone you trusted sold you out. For money, for attention, for convenience. Maybe you've been left behind by the very people who were supposed to protect you. I want you to know this. You're not broken beyond repair. You're not unlovable just because someone failed to love you right. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories.